Okay, so today we're going to talk about travel. Um, we both love to travel. Oh, hey, should we introduce ourselves?
Oh,
I'm
sure.
Teresa,
I'm Tammy.
and so we are sisters, and very close in age, and we always seem to be. Our life always seems to be paralleling each other in different ways, regardless of whether we've discussed it or not. So we thought, let's share some of our thoughts on podcasts, even if it's just for ourselves, for our kids, for our extended family. But let's
Yes. And I gotta add in, it doesn't matter if we're like living close together, which is the first time in I'm sure since we were teenagers, or whether we're on opposite sides of Canada. It just doesn't matter.
yeah. So today we want to talk about travel, and so we both love to travel. We both have, um, some of that might be how we were raised and the fact that we were always moving as military families. Some of that might be, other factors that kind of create that space. But let's start with some stats. So, according to ChatGPT, so according to our statistics here, I did do a little bit of what what does it look like for Canadians? Do Canadians like to do spontaneous travel? So last minute travel or even unscheduled travel, right? Versus planning it all out. And maybe in our conversation, we can talk about the difference between spontaneous travel, as in, I think I'm going to travel, decision is spontaneous, versus how we like to travel. Do we like to have everything scheduled? Do we like to have everything planned out? Do we just let it flow? So let's get into some of that. But here's what the Canadian Insights say. So in Canada, 37% of travelers took a last minute trip in 2023. 43% expressed interest in doing so in 2024. And 47% of Canadians booked travel within 2 weeks of their departure, so 14 days. And then globally, I thought this was an interesting piece because it talks about the breakdown of, generations and how spontaneous we are in travel might change based on the generation. So this was an American Express survey from 2024, and it said 78% of travelers globally find spontaneous trips appealing, whether they do it or not. They like the romanticism of a spontaneous trip. Um, for Gen Z and millennials, 77% have booked last minute travel compared to 65 in our generation for Gen X and then 52 for baby boomers. So I guess the bottom line is it sounds wonderful and romantic and exciting and thrilling, and maybe for those who don't find that thrilling, it might be scary, or it might be a matter of last minute decisions, changes, money shows up, people are fed up, they just need to get south, get warm. But it does look like the older we get, so whether it's because when we're older, we need a little more planning and we're not as spontaneous, whether it's those age groups, Gen X and baby boomers have more commitments and aren't able to just up and travel, or whether that's something that was taught to us culturally as we were in that generation as kids, that you had to plan, and like there's lots of different dynamics there. It could not be about age. It could just be about how we were raised compared to our kids being raised. It could be where we are in our life, health, financially, that might stop us from spontaneous travel. Anyway, interesting stats to start us off with. So let me ask you, Tammy, how do you how do you travel now? Do you see a shift in your spontaneous travel versus planned travel, like planning over 6 months in advance versus spontaneous? Have you seen a shift? And if so, what do you think is stimulating that shift?
You know what? I gotta say, yes, in a way. So, I was tried to plan. And then I find it frustrating to plan, in the past because I was trying to plan for like so many people and so many things. And does it work? And how do you take care of it all for everybody? And how do you fit everybody in? And then more recently, I just find that I would rather just not schedule. I would rather just go and see how I feel, see what fits. Maybe some of it's about budget, right? Do I have the budget and do I have the time because of my job? So sometimes my job had me so scheduled that I would plan out my whole year of travel. But sometimes it wasn't like just fun travel. It was business specific with fun on either side. And so that's one of the reasons why I had to be maybe so scheduled, right? Or when I had the kids and you had to work around school. And so I do believe that it's changed. So, and some of it's just, I don't want to be as scheduled in my relaxed time. I am so scheduled at work and need to be on that side that when I want to just go, I don't want to. I can plan one or two things, but I don't know when within that time frame I'll do it, unless it has to be like, if I wanted to go and I needed to buy tickets ahead of time, well, then maybe I would be more apt to put that in, right? But yeah, more recently, I just feel like if it feels good, I'm going to go. And then if there's something else, then I'll do something else, as opposed to travel. So, yeah. And depends on if it's local or far away too, right?
So you mentioned a few things there, like one of them being logistics. So our capacity to figure out all the details, and I'm thinking, I'm sure you can come up with some complex logistic travel, but the last time I had to do a fairly significant complex travel was taking 4 kids for 3 weeks through Europe in a Mercedes passenger van through 8 countries, right? There's a lot of logistics there to move, find accommodations in all those spots, arrange for, not only planes and, your transportation over there and then meals and then trying to make sure you've got something for everyone and building in enough room for contingencies. So that's a lot of logistics. And so maybe after we've done that level of logistics, like you said, when we try to embark on something like that again, I was looking at trying to build another European tour this fall. The logistics were getting, a little overwhelming where I'm like, maybe we'll just go to the Caribbean, right? So logistics certainly would be one of those things that might be impacting people's decision on how they travel, whether it's just last minute and they don't want the logistics versus putting all that effort into planning and traveling. And because now it's almost too much information is available. Whereas before you didn't have enough information, you had to go through a travel agent to do it. Now you could do it yourself, but oh goodness, there's so much information out there to have to look at.
If you think about, the thought processes that go through that, then you're bringing in the dynamics of the people traveling, right? The food, how's everybody going to sleep? Where you're going to go? And then you think about that overstimulation of so many things available, you don't want to miss out. So then you cram everything into your plan. And then you're like, how's that going to be relaxing? Then you have to take a vacation from your vacation because it's been so crammed full of move and move and move. And so really maybe it's what's the purpose behind the visit or behind the vacation? Is it exploring and understanding and learning, or is it relaxation? And maybe that has something to do with whether you plan or whether you just take that more relaxed approach. And if you want to have a blend of the two, having, you're going to be, this is our amount of time. These are the 3 or 4 main things we want to do. And then the rest is like, if it's available, we're going to go. If it's not available, we'll find something else. If it's rainy, well, and just take some time. So then you get your actual brain rest as well. in the time that you're traveling.
Yeah, agreed. That's definitely something that I've been building in, I would say, into travel for probably at least the last 10, 12 years is making sure that we're building in downtime. So we will, when we travel, so, let's talk about new experience. So traveling in a new experience to on a cruise, it was a new experience. So we made sure that we built in, affording a suite. So if we just wanted some of our own time, because we weren't sure, is that going to be too many people? There's a lot of people on a cruise ship. What if we just want to spend time by ourselves and not be overwhelmed with like peopling, or if that's traveling on a trip and we'll bring friends who maybe will join us for 7 of the 14 days or 7 of the 10 days so that we've built in our own time before or after or both so that we just have our own down space instead of just always peopling, whether it's the people you brought, the people around you, the people in your community that you're traveling. But I think, definitely having build-in would definitely be one of those best practices is finding the right balance for you because everyone's different of how much do you feel you need to have control over your itinerary versus absolutely no control and having no idea where you're going or somewhere in that middle of, you have key points, key destinations, but you're allowing yourself to enjoy the trip as part of the travel. Like the destination isn't always the goal. It's in meandering, exploring, wandering wherever that is. If that's in a different country, if that's in your own local backyard, but enjoying the exploration as part of the trip and not just the destination that has to be, nailed right down.
Yeah, exactly. And I think too, part of the planning part is that, are you able to collaborate with the people that you're with? You talked about how do you need to have your travel and then, are you able to have a conversation with the people you're traveling with to find out what their needs are and what their expectations are and how they are? Because, if you've got two people who are like avid planners, but you're going in different directions, or one person that's like, I don't need to do anything, so I don't want you to plan. And, so being able to communicate those out, even locations where you're going and stuff. I remember trying to plan for a family of five, and I'm like, where does everybody want to go? And they were like, I don't know. And I think, oh, how do I think for you? How do I think for you to make sure that I'm getting it right? And so that was, thank God there was a travel agent. This is what I need. And these are the most important parts. Where do you want me to go? Where can I go? And it just took that, the anxiety of planning away. And then I was able to like, look at excursion or look at things within that space, but just the getting there, somebody else took care of. And then, I worked within the space of that time frame, which then made it really easy to enjoy as a family or whatever, right? So it really is, kind of a great space. And I mean, I've just taken on solo traveling, which I thought, at first, I spontaneous traveling is something that I've really, 2025, I've gone twice spontaneously, just 3 weeks, a month and a half out. One with people who had never met each other but both knew me and were like, let's go. And then another time just on my own. And then you have the opinion of others, like, oh, you should go here. Oh, maybe it's there. It's safer for you to go by yourself as a female solo traveler. Oh, well, if you're going here, just make sure you do this. And I'm thinking, oh, like, okay, whoop, how do you clear out the weeds and just think for yourself and just go and and I went with just booked and said, I'm gonna go. Like that's it, and so there's a difference in that as well than when you go with a group.
Yeah, and I think solo travel, even, certainly in our geopolitical environment now, you know, it adds a layer of your planning. So whereas before, if you were planning as a family, you're more focused on where are we going to eat, where are we going to sleep, what's everybody going to do, how long is it going to take us? How much money is it going to cost for everybody? When you're a solo traveler, it's more about you now have to add another layer of where am I going to feel safe? Is there going to be, what am I going to do with my own time? How comfortable am I at meeting different people when I get there? Am I prepared or equipped to deal with contingencies, flights getting canceled, getting stuck somewhere, getting sick somewhere, right? So for sure. And so all of those layers, and I think that happens regardless of the distance because I'm sure, and I've met a number. We of course have a boondocking site for RVers to come in. And last year we had a lot of single female RV boondockers, and I asked them the same thing. Have you always traveled with your fifth wheel by yourself? And most of them last year they were like, no, I decided, for whatever circumstances, they're single. And I thought, you know what, this year I'm going to push myself and I'm going to travel. So they were traveling, across Canada. They were traveling from the States into Canada. They were traveling across Ontario, but they were saying, you know what, I'm going to get out there. So now they have to deal with, okay, mechanical issues and flat tires. And like, they really have to add that extra layer of their travel because the travel being not the destination, but the travel is the actual experience brings a whole different layer when you're by yourself. So every little thing, who's going to back you in and who's going to, it's easier when you get 2 or 3 people potentially. So there's a different layer that's there when you travel solo.
So I'm going to be quite honest. My ideal, like if I were to just say, and I'd love to hear yours, if I were just to say, what would be my ideal trip? I think my ideal trip would be with a group of people or 1 or 2 or whatever. But in that time, each person knowing that they have the ability to say, today I just need a me day, and I don't need to be with the pack. I don't need to be with the group. I just want to go or an hour or 2 hours or 4 hours. I just want to go sit on the beach and I'll come back and see you. Like, we'll come back together. Because I think that so for me with being on my own for a while, I've got comfortable being in that space. And I don't mind. It was the first time traveling there, and I sure had some, I went I took the safe route and I did go to an all inclusive, um, but there's still that level of anxiety of what are people thinking of me? Are they going to judge me for being on my own? How's that going to feel if I go and eat on my own? We go through that anyway if we want to go to the restaurant on our own. And I remember reading about that, back a few years back, not reading about it, but just kind of thinking about it. And if I wasn't taking the time to do that, then you're just living in your anxiety space. So, there are all those questions because when you're with somebody else, you don't think and you don't worry about what everybody else is thinking about. Yeah, you're just hanging out. But when you're on your own, there's a lot of those, that piece. And, I gotta say that the one thing that I found was that people were so accepting and they were like, this is so cool. So cool that you were so, you're brave. And I'm like, I'm not sure about brave by any means. I just wanted to, this is just not something I wanted to do. But it brings a different level. And then you have to plan it all yourself. And you're right. Like I was, stuck where I was for 26 hours and it's like, whoa, but I wasn't alone. I had a whole plane with me, you know? So although I was on my own, I was the only one on my plane at my resort, mind you. But there was a whole plane when I was delayed 26 hours. So, it was certainly something that I really enjoyed. But it made me remember that I love to travel with people, but I do appreciate if somebody says to me, I need my space. I understand that because that's something that I also need, as I like to say, I want to go back for a nap. I want to go back for a nap. I don't want somebody to judge that, right? So yeah.
So I think that's one of the advantages of the maturity of our travel. So, we're not a group of people in our 20s traveling. We're also not traveling with young kids anymore. And so now we're at a spot where our travel itinerary is being adjusted to reflect, a different level of maturity. So you asked, you mentioned your favorite travel or what my favorite travel. My favorite travel would probably be to travel with my spouse. So when it's just the two of us. And, but I think when we travel with other people, like we do like to bring, either another couple or friends or make sure we're seeing friends along the way, whichever it is. And, but we always now make sure we build in what are some of the activities that only he and I are going to do. So if we're traveling with another couple to another country, what are some of the things that you guys want to do that you're just going to go off and do, whether it's on the resort or scuba diving, or you're going to take the rental, or you're going to take an excursion? And what are some of the things that we're just going to do ourselves? And what are some of the things we're going to do as four people? And then also, what are some of the things that I might just go do myself, whether that's a walk on the beach or, it doesn't always have to be everybody wanting to do the same thing. And I think that comes with maturity of travel and lessons learned. But I also think that that's a little bit of a advantage we have now that we wouldn't have had when we have kids, because then it's not just about us. It's about our kids first and foremost, and we're also trying to be sensitive to everyone's emotions and what everybody's energy levels, and whether that's our spouse, whether that's in-laws or parents traveling with us, or our kids. Everybody has their own individual needs, and it's kind of sometimes hard to juggle all of that.
And on top of that, when you're dealing with traveling with friends, it can be the same, right? Some people have never traveled before. Some people have traveled a lot. I've traveled a lot. A lot of it, like I said, was with work or business, but I added on different, time on the ends. And then with families. So it's kind of neat. And even if it's local, and I love just being, my friends call me the road runner. It was quite funny. Like, they're like, "Where are you going this weekend? How come you're not staying home?" And so sometimes there's that level of space, and that comes with, um, that comes with your time, freedom, or financial abilities, and or just needing to experience and be curious of different places that you have in your area, even.
Curiosity is a big piece of it, because if you don't have curiosity, it doesn't matter how much your financial ability or anything else. If you just don't have that level of curiosity. One of our favorite games is What's Down This Road. And so we play that every opportunity we get. We'll play What's Down This Road. So whether that means going from, here to, a community 45 minutes from here, and we're going to take a totally different route to get there, whether that means, we're going to load up, our recreational vehicles and explore a part of Ontario we've never been to before, or whether that means finding a way that's going to take us there when we're in other countries. So we geocache, and geocaching is our way of playing What's Down This Road in a totally different country that we're not familiar with. So whether that means it's, another country, another part of Ontario, if we're not familiar with it, geocaching allows us to play What's Down This Road, because the destination is to find the cache. But again, it's about curiosity. It's not about the cache. It's about being curious enough to say, hey, somebody lives in this community. What's it all about? Let me Google it. Let's stop at the museum. Let's figure out what's the history of this space. Who would live out here? Those are all curiosity based. And it'd be interesting to see how much curiosity plays in people who travel, because there are people who have never traveled, don't care to travel. I certainly know people that are both retired and have no interest at all in travel unless it's absolutely necessary, and then again, not for pleasure or recreation. It's only out of requirement. And So I wonder how much curiosity, like what their level of curiosity is versus, I wouldn't say complacency, because complacency has a negative connotation to it, but people who are just comfortable where they're at, that homebody persona, right? Of people who are just comfortable in their space, comfortable. Maybe they've got all their family and friends and living close by, and they're not curious as to what else is out there available in the world. So,
And I think that this is a great space to really reflect on that. What are the reasons that, there are sometimes that people just don't travel. And for whatever reason, right? It could be that, could be, like you said, generationally, you know, it, there was a purpose to your travel, right? And then as we get older, when we don't have the kids, we can travel more often. There's a freedom. But at the younger age, they want to explore. They've got a different curiosity about them. They want to see different parts of Canada, and then explore out from there even. And so it's interesting to see the change in the dynamics and stuff. So yeah, great conversation today. Yeah, for sure.
travel series. So while right now our podcasts have been a little bit random, we do want to be able to have a few that will touch on a theme. So travel was one of those series where occasionally we'll do a travel related. So it could be when we're ready to plan for a travel, when we've just gotten back from traveling, maybe while we're traveling, maybe, if one of us is in a location and we're able to do a podcast right then and there. I'd also love to do a podcast, that starts with, why do we like to travel, right? So the fact that you and I have been traveling since we were toddlers, and entirely different countries and different languages and different cultures, and so that removes a lot of those first barriers for people when you travel and you become an easy traveler. And that may also be what prompts curiosity and the way we were raised to always consider curiosity. So those are some interesting topics we can explore and kind of peel the onion a little bit when it comes to travel, because I think those would be some interesting ones.
Absolutely. And maybe, ways that we travel, like you said, cruising or, going out to an all inclusive or just going to a Caribbean that's not all inclusive, timeshare, going by train somewhere, and sharing some of those experiences, because going by train with three babies, that was fun. And those are fun ones to talk about for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, Tammy, have a great weekend. Thanks to
Yes,
everybody that's listening in. And we will, I'm sure we'll touch about travel again. And we've got a couple of other interesting ideas as well that we might want to build
absolutely.
into a series. So
Yep.
have yourself a great weekend.
Take care.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye bye.